going to be talking about the economy, and we're going to flow that right into politics on the next video. So economy determines how a society produces, distributes, and consumes goods and services. A philosopher, economist, wear many hats, Adam Smith, said basically with capitalism there's four essential characteristics. There's private ownership of the property and the means of production. There's market competition. There's profit. You want to do something that's profitable. And there's investment. You want to be able to invest back into your business or invest long-term for even more profit. So this is what Adam Smith talks about in his writings about capitalism. Now sometimes corporations form a monopoly. This is when one person or one company dominates the entire market. So we could probably think of some examples of that. We also have oligopoly. This is like the dominant company in a market or industry by like a few large companies. So think of like back in the day, there used to be like dozens and dozens of airlines. Now the skies are pretty much controlled by like 4 airlines here in the U.S. We're talking about Southwest, United, Delta, and so on. They control most of the market now. A different type of government model is socialism, which we've heard a lot of bad things about, right? But socialism is the collective ownership of property. It entails cooperation between people. There's not necessarily a profit motive. There's collective goals for a group. The fear with socialism is sometimes that can lead into communism. And there's plenty of examples of communism as well as socialism. If we look at China, Cuba, Laos, North Korea, Vietnam, and so on. But this is where all production is owned by the public. Socialism allows some free market, but communism doesn't allow any free market. It's owned by public or the government or so forth. We have more of a model of what would be referred to from sociologists as welfare capitalism. This combines private ownership of property, market competition, and government regulations guiding those businesses. Large companies drive both capitalism and mixed economies, so that looks a lot like what we have here in the United States today. Now, I mentioned the word corporations earlier. I think it's important that we define that. So a corporation is an organization that has legal rights, privileges, liabilities, that they have formed a company. Now there's also transnational corporations. These corporations operate across international borders. We have conglomerates. These are when a corporation that owns a collection of companies in different industries. So they work through mergers, diversifying their business risk, and so on. Think like Nestle has all sorts of subsidiary companies, or Kraft Foods. A lot of these companies, Johnson & Johnson, they own a lot more companies than you realize. Those are examples of conglomerates. So that being said, looking at our economy, we can't look at our economy recently without looking at deindustrialization. There were around 20 million manufacturing jobs in 1979, and the last count from 2010, what your book illustrates, is about 11 million manufacturing jobs. This is because workers were often replaced with automation. This is because of people not cooperating with unions. This is also due to globalization. Globalization is seen as a good thing. We have access to more than we ever have. But it also allows companies to save money by setting up their businesses overseas. So it hurts some jobs and it helps others. Globalization is what I'm referring to. Sending jobs abroad, this is what's referred to as offshoring, and it happens a lot. So half of U.S. jobs pay less than $15 an hour. The minimum wage has been stuck at $7.25 since 2009. Some other examples with corporations and employee relationships. Walmart has raised wages up to $10 an hour, which a lot of people thought was a good thing and find it really interesting. It's still not what we would consider a livable wage. And an example of how these big things work, if Walmart were to raise all of their employees' wages to $12 an hour, an extra $2 an hour for all employees, and they passed on all the cost to the customers, it would cost your average customer an extra 46 cents for that consumer to shop there, like per shopping trip. So it kind of helps put that into perspective, how much money companies make versus how much they pay we could say how much they get away with paying their employees. So there's a lot of people that are now going to like part-time, temporary, gig work, online teaching. Most of the 27 million part-time workers in the United States can't find full-time work. So we're seeing a huge increase in freelancers and online workers. Now, speaking of workers, unemployment rates peaked most recently in 2010, but has been on a steady decline for the most part since 69% of Americans report not being fully engaged at their job, particularly service workers, our essential workers. When you look at from a global scale, your average work week in Europe is up to 35 hours. They pay higher taxes over there, but they also receive like a better pension when they retire. So it's worth mentioning some global perspective on that. We're actually the only industrialized nation that doesn't guarantee paid vacations, and approximately 25% of those in the workforce have no vacation, no paid holidays, things like that. Women have contributed and have changed the landscape of the workforce. They also tend to graduate college more. We know all about, the stay-at-home women in the 50s and 60s and how that just started changing everything. So that's another interesting aspect of the labor force that we could dissect and look at a closer lens. So we're going to jump into theories right here. So if we're looking at this macro functionalism perspective, a functionalist would say that capitalism benefits society. It provides income, it provides structure, it gives people a sense of accomplishment, fulfilling goals. However, functionalism ignores like work stress, poor pay, and the effects of what we talked about in a previous video, McDonaldization, that can kind of alienate people from their work. If we go to a conflict theorist perspective, which is also macro, capitalism, they would say that capitalism enables the rich to exploit other groups. Because most jobs are low paying, a lot of people don't live below the poverty line. It ignores people's inability to get ahead, though. So that would be like a criticism of that. Like there are paths laid out that can lead to success, and conflict theory tends to avoid those things. When we're looking at feminist theory, gender roles tend to structure jobs unequally, and we know about unequal pay, so I'm not going to get into that. But this also ignores women that are able to get ahead. Much like conflict theory, like there are paths to success, which is probably the biggest criticism of conflict or feminist theory. When we look at symbolic interactionism, though, how people define and experience work affects workplace behavior and relationships. So it's like we get what we put into it, what we want to take from it. This ignores group experiences and some of these things that unions have drawn attention to. So yeah, that's a look at the theories. So like I said, next time we're going to be talking about the political aspect of this. We'll see you then.